Did you know that over 81% of grade 4 learners cannot read for meaning? What this means is that they are not being challenged enough in school to become critical thinkers or analytical thinkers. This becomes a problem because by the time they reach grade 12, they are not going to be able to become critical assessors of things. And whether we like it or not, the job market demands these skills. Now, with Parliament voting against the 30% pass rate increase, this means that learners who are currently in our education system are going to become a generation of people who are not going to be actively engaged in civil society because they don't necessarily understand what is happening.
30% is a sign of a failed education system. 30% is not enough to teach our children critical thinking skills. 30% is not enough to teach our children discipline. But what 30% is good enough for is to create employees as opposed to employers. Our education system has failed dismally. And yes, I agree that children should be taught more than what books can teach them. But at the end of the day, to assume that 30% is enough in order for them to start their future is ignorant. 30% is not enough. And I'm not going to sit and assume that the only thing our children are good enough for is to become part of the workforce. Our education has failed, and the education department has failed, and they assumed that dropping it to 30% will hold them less accountable for their failure. It has not.
You see, these are the kinds of things that make me lose complete hope in the future of South Africa. Because why are we still choosing to maintain the system of Bantu education in the big 2025? Our current public education system is no better than the Bantu education system. Because in the same way Bantu education destroyed the future economic and career prospects of young black students, it's the same way our current public education system fails to prepare those very same students for the job market and for tertiary education. And I just want to draw your attention to the parties that chose to maintain this system. The ANC, typical, the DA, the so-called saviors of South Africa. All these GNU parties were marketed as being a breath of fresh air to South African politics. They have been incredibly underwhelming and have merely maintained the status quo. And I'll just leave you with this. As a South African, if you continue voting for these parties up there, especially the ANC, note that history will record you as one of those who played a role in the destruction of our great country.
So your ANC and DA has done it again. So we've all saw the articles, we read about it, heard about it from a friend or a video that Mmusi Maimane and his company or his movement or his party, BOSA, Build One South Africa, came with the notion that we need to increase the 30% pass rate in matric to 50%. So Mmusi Maimane came and he said, no, 30% is too low. We're breeding a generation of 30%ers. We need to increase it to 50 and we need to implement it now. So whether you're against it or not, it is not up to us. So it was on the desk of Parliament and political parties needed to vote. There was political parties who voted with Mmusi Maimane, naming the EFF, IFP and Action SA. They all said like, yes, we need to increase 30% to 50%. It only makes sense. We need a generation of 50%ers. But guess who voted no? Guess who said, no, we don't want 50%ers, we want 30%ers.
Here I come.
You guessed it, the DA and the ANC.
How? Hold on, bro.
Why, you may ask, why they voted against the movement or the notion? It's because they want us dumb. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, they want to keep us dumb.
30% pass rate. 30% pass rate in an education system is absolutely laughable. I am not saying that everybody is an academic. Not everybody has the heart or the passion or the talent to be academically minded. However, it's not okay to know 30% of the work It's not okay to be a mechanic that can do 30% of the work, to be a plumber that only knows 30% of how to install a tap, to be anybody who knows 30% only of any subject matter. It's not enough. Not if you are striving for excellence, not if you want to compete on a global platform. It's okay, however, if you are a ruling party, to have people at a 30% pass rate, and I'll tell you why. It means that you are keeping your people ignorant. If you keep your people ignorant and you don't allow them to develop critical thinking, you don't encourage them to ask questions, to learn further, what you're saying is, let's keep you dumb so we can manipulate you. Let's tell you what to think, so you will keep voting for us and keep us in power.
We must end 30% matric pass mark. A. It sets low expectations across the board. B. It obfuscates the state of our education system and inflates the pass rate. C. It allows poor education leaders like Angie Motshekga to dodge accountability. End it. C. Nazo. Scrap maths literacy and life orientation. Teach our kids valuable life skills and maths liti. It used to be 33% during apartheid. The difference is only 3%. I don't see a big deal. 50% minimum. 33 or 30 is just fine. I agree with this end 30% matric pass. Take it down to 10%. That's what our politicians are giving us. This end 30% matric doesn't make any sense when the learning system in townships is so horrible. How do you expect them to pass with good marks while they were studying without electricity? And you can't blame it on electricity.
Point is, how can you say that 30% is a matric pass rate? That makes all of our matriculants and people that matriculated makes us obsolete. That is like 3 slices of a bread. That's a 30 rand from 100 rand. That's driving 30 kilometers in a 100 kilometer zone. That's like putting 3 peanuts into this black cat peanut butter available at Shoprite. The point here is, man, Mmusi Maimane is finally doing something right. After he left the DA over some vehicle thingy, a little bit of corruption, the type of stuff that doesn't even make an ANC politician or MP shake in his bones. He's finally doing something right by doing this petition saying that 30% for a matric pass rate is bad. It makes us all look bad. It makes us all look stupid in South Africa, for lack of a better word. How are we going to get to international schools?
Why, Mara, why?
So this is now a lot of drama on this 30% pass rate issue. I watched an interview by Minister Siviwe where she was explaining in detail the problems from foundational phase up until matric. And she was also saying that Mmusi is being very disingenuous because he knows that she's busy with the process. I appreciated her explanation. But I feel like, one, there's no urgency. She only has a 5-year term, and we've seen that there's no continuity from one minister to the other because they each start their own process. 2, if you know at the beginning of your career, your schooling career, that the exit requirements are 30% and then 40% for languages, that's already set up a failure. You already set the standard in the children's minds that if I want to exit this, or when I do exit this, I only have to get 30 or 40% for languages. And I think that is the true frustrations. Let's increase the exit percentages or the exit requirements. And then when the feedback comes from whomever's doing this analysis, then the variables also can be put in. But just to say, wait, we're going to wait for the feedback, and then we're going to then, do what? 5 years would have gone by. 5 years would have gone by, a new minister would come in, and that new minister would also start their process. And before you know it, would have been 10 years, and the exit requirements will still be 30 and 40% for languages.